With his mind finally free to focus on anything besides food for the first time in weeks, Jules wakes up to a feeling of emptiness he had all but ignored up until this point. His books, his previous life, and a wealth of powerful knowledge had all been taken away from him by fear and terror, but now he finally had both the strength and resolve to go retake what was rightfully his. Looking over his map of Riverside in the dim light of his bedroom, Jules marks down the various buildings he can remember as he begins to feel the uncertainty creeping into the depths of his heart. Up until now, he had only dispatched the dead he would consider strangers, but returning back to the school he had worked in would force him to confront shambling creatures with familiar faces. Still unsure of his ability to attack his previous neighbors, Jules uses the foggy hours of the morning to begin numbing himself to the sensation of crushing skulls and snuffing out the twisted mockeries of life. Filling his stomach one final time as the fog finally begins to clear, Jules no longer has an excuse to delay as he now fully sets his determined gaze towards his abandoned sanctuary. Making it to the outskirts of Riverside, Jules peers into the surprisingly sparse neighborhood before he spies the rolling migration of undead that warned of the lurking dangers still residing after the horde. Already spying familiar figures shambling by as he waits for them to pass, Jules reminds himself that the people they once were had been lost, and all that remained was giving them a true and lasting peace. Coming into view of the school he had dedicated so much of his life to, an agonizing pain grips his strained soul as he gazes over the crumbling bricks and the mindless monsters roaming the once vibrant schoolyard. Spying even more undead migrating further east, Jules waits out their slow trudge once more as he reinforces his composure in preparation for pushing inside. Suddenly faced with a wall of corrupted friends and co-workers, Jules' determination scatters as his frantic hands hurry him away from the horrific reality of what he must do. Spying that the sun hung low in the sky as he creates enough distance, he welcomes the excuse to not return to the school for today, and instead sets his sights on securing a temporary bed amongst the ghosts of this town. Wondering if he now claimed the bed of someone he once shared a smile with, Jules falls into an uneasy sleep to give his body the much-needed rest it required to get him through the trials of tomorrow. Approaching the rear door slowly and quietly, Jules can already spy a slow trickle of undead leaking from the shattered door of his building, making him already fear the numbers that must still reside inside. Clinging desperately to the knowledge that they would show him no mercy, Jules fights back the beginnings of tears as he scatters the brains of teachers and staff across the cold concrete. kept the bloodshed outside for as long as possible, Jules finally sprays rotten crimson across the white tiles of the cafeteria as the sanctity of his school now fully collapses. After not only clearing the undead within, but also the relentless creatures that sniffed out the spilled guts of their brethren, Jules is finally able to sneak into his library, though the once relaxing scent of books was now stained with the lingering stench of rot. Miraculously though, as he creeps ever closer to the first shelf, Jules spies his long-lost companions still dutifully holding their own against the destruction of this world. Wasting no time as he carefully fills his bags with the priceless harvest of information, Jules finally feels the stubborn void in his heart begin to fill as the hint of a truly lasting peace shows itself for the first time. Loading and unloading his precious books until his legs ached and his back stung, Jules finally fills the capacity of his van and promises to return for the tomes he's forced to leave behind. Now fighting his way back out of Riverside, Jules pulls his tired van onto the main road and acknowledges that his groggy eyes wouldn't get him back to Little Hope before night fell. Deciding to hunker down in the farmhouse he'd explored during his previous scouting, Jules knows that one last fight was required of him before he could rest, though the joy of having a van full of books gave him all the fuel he required. Gaining entry into the pristine truck that had been overtaken by weeds, Jules accepts the fact that his current van had been battered and beaten to the point of retirement. Transferring over the incredible haul of literature into the bed of the truck, Jules tucks away the vehicle that had more than likely saved his life, before giving the rural farmsteads one last glance before departing back to Little Hope. Beaming from ear to ear as he hears the familiar sound of his tires rolling over the coarse gravel road, Jules steers his new ride up the hill towards his station, as his mind begins to obsess over the potential library he could create. Knowing that the current layout of his home wouldn't allow for a room dedicated to his valuable books, Jules pulls his truck into his parking spot and prepares for the monumental task of organizing the haphazard collection of supplies he had gathered during his desperate survival. Forgive me for not informing you of my plans sooner, but I've been beginning to feel uneasy about putting my ideas to paper. Every time I do, the world routinely snuffs out my hope and scatters my will back into the wind. Anyway, I conquered a fear that had been long growing in my heart, returning to Riverside. I had not set foot in the town since the outbreak, and that's been almost 5 months ago. 5 months. Has it really been that long? I'm losing focus once again. My biggest concern was for my library at the school. I couldn't imagine that it would stay organized and intact after the fall of the refugee camp, but perhaps I have a reason to thank the undead for once. They have no interest in literature, so my wonderful collection and carefully crafted system was almost immaculate upon my return. Sadly, I couldn't retrieve all my children, but at least I can sleep peacefully at night, knowing the rest are awaiting my return. Amongst my pamphlets, I found a guide on how to trap birds in a survival situation. From what I can gather, the area around Little Hope would be perfect for this tactic. We will soon see. Jules.